here, folks, and let us press along here at this point in time. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Doc. You brought me a refreshment. Okay, was that? We're gonna get the stuff together for you in a bit. I haven't gotten up from here as yet to do anything else. But we're gonna move on that for you for sure. We can speak to it though. We can speak to it briefly about this event that comes up here. There is a fundraiser. There's an event that comes up here in Anguilla, folks, being brought to you by the committee to elect Dee-Ann Kentish-Rogers, District 4. That's the committee. She's here. Let me say good morning first of all to the team. Though. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Emma.
All right, okay, Dr. Webster, you're here, but Dee-Ann, you're in the building as well, and folks, Dee-Ann, who's a household name in the District 4 Valley South, really. There's a big event coming up here, our fundraiser. Quincia is in the building too. Who speaks about this fundraiser? What's happening tomorrow? Tell me.
So tomorrow, tomorrow for all the residents and individuals in District 4 and beyond, if you'd like to come by, we're gonna have a barbecue fundraiser. We're gonna have barbecue chicken, barbecue ribs, rolls, drinks. We're gonna have domino competitions and more fun, music. So if you're available, it starts from 4:30 p.m. tomorrow until. It's just about good vibes and raising funds to move through for this campaign.
Okay, so it goes down where? Tell me.
It goes down on the Ray Hill basketball court.
Basketball court.
From 4:30 tomorrow. Tomorrow.
So what's on sale again? Tell me what's on sale.
So we have barbecue chicken, barbecue ribs, rolls, drinks.
Okay.
And Domino's on sale, but there'll be Domino's.
Okay. From what time?
4:30 p.m.
4:30
So everyone who's a hard knock on the domino table, please come by.
I hope you have music. You have music up there?
Of course.
Okay, good.
We got the vibes. We got the vibes.
Good. Real vibes up there.
Yes.
Okay, so folks, you heard that. So District 4, Ray Hill tomorrow, 4:30. Basketball court. It all goes down there. Fundraiser being brought to you by the committee to elect Dee-Ann Kentish-Rogers in District 4 Valley South, right? That's what's up?
Yes, and we also have, this is separate and apart from, we're going to be in two places at once, but we also have a youth bonfire tomorrow evening, and this is reserved for younger persons in District 4 and across the country. So we have a bonfire tomorrow evening down Crocus Bay, starting at,
What time?
starting a little bit later in the evening.
And for residents of District 4?
For everyone. All the young people across the island. Yeah.
So a bit about the bonfires. What does this entail? A bonfire? What's it? Just light a fire, have a chit chat. What do you do? What do you do?
It really and truly it's an environment where people can just sit down and have a conversation about what's on their minds. So they get to experience and talk to people one-on-one rather than just having to go through all the paperwork and the red tape. So we just want to have an environment where people can come and they can chill and they can feel comfortable to really say exactly how they feel.
Okay, and before you go, you're here, and I know that you are the big name in Valley South now. Really, you turn online in the media. Dee-Ann Kentish-Rogers' name pops up here. How's it going? Being out there campaigning. What's the feedback been like? From the people of this area.
The campaign has been very interesting thus far. As you know, this is a learning experience for me because this is the first time I'm running for elected office. But thus far, the feedback has been very good. I appreciate, and one thing I really appreciate is people's honesty. They've been, if there have been individuals who said, "Hey, I'm not really sure where I stand," they've been comfortable enough to say that to me, but still give me an ear, still listen to me, still say that I've given them a lot to think about, and that's what I really want to do. Engage with people, let them hear my side of the story, let them see what I have to present, and then give them the opportunity to make an informed choice.
All right, sounds good.
Yes.
Good. All right,
yes.
Dee-Ann Kentish-Rogers, thank you. Okay, so folks, tomorrow 4:30 at Basketball Court Ray Hill, grand fundraiser from 4:30. Guys, going up there, you meet your candidate in District 4 for the APM. Dee-Ann Kentish-Rogers and her team, right? So be out tomorrow in your numbers, supporters, and support this fundraiser, all right? Thank you. Dr. Ellis Webster, the leader of the APM, is in the building, so too is Quincia Gums. This must be a special day. I have no doubt about that. It must be special indeed. Doc, again, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Emma. Good morning to ladies Dee-Ann and Quincia, who are here in the studio. Good morning to your radio listeners here in Anguilla and abroad, and those who are following us on the system here. They get to see what's happening, not only listen. It's always a pleasure, and today is a special day. I don't know if you qualify to be a youth to go to the bonfire, so I don't know why you're asking so many questions.
I want to hear about it. I heard one before, so I want to know what it is,
I think the youth qualifier is 35 and under, but we can sneak in and get a chicken leg or something. Maybe soup, right?
Maybe soup. The food, snacks will be there.
Where? At the bonfire?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, didn't know that.
But there will be food.
Okay, good. We didn't know that.
But
Okay.
we want the.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Real cool.
Food has to be everywhere.
All right.
I let out the secret for you then.
You didn't know we wanted food.
Yes. Well, you go up to the basketball court in Ray Hill. That'll be fun.
All right. One lady saying here, and I'm lady that she's so big, said, you should run out of large for this young lady. She's powerful. She's that powerful. One lady saying that here.
Let's tell her to tell all her friends in District 4 to keep at it. And we have good at-large candidates that they'll be happy to vote for next to the sailboat. Fill in the oval or put an X in the oval and make sure it's only in the oval, not all over the ballot, But leading into that, Hammer, today, I would like to announce that Ms. Quincia Gumbs-Marie is here with us, and she will be, contesting with the Anguilla Progressive Movement, the APM, under the symbol, the sailboat, as an at-large candidate.
I feel like one. Big announcement.
One more time. I guess I should say Mrs. Quincia Gumbs-Marie. Recently married, and so, she has decided that she is here and willing to put herself up, and we are delighted, excited, and I know the people of Anguilla will be also to have her, and she will be contesting the next elections Anguilla as an at-large candidate with the Anguilla Progressive Movement. Yes, so.
You are surrounded by powerful women, very powerful people.
Definitely.
That's just something. Congratulations, very powerful. And I have another thing.
Women rule,
Yeah. And with these two, you have very powerful debaters, people who are focused, people who have vision as well. And I think this is a good move for Anguilla, really, when it comes to decision making and negotiations. In particular, you want these two on your side.
That is why, I don't want them against us, But I think that Anguilla will be proud to have them.
Trust me.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So, Quincia, let me say good morning to you, Quincia, again.
Good morning, Hammer.
Congratulations to you,
Thank
Quincia. All right. So, tell me about you in politics now, Quincia. And I know that this is in your family too. The bloodline has always been involved in Anguilla's affairs from way back then. You grew up in the household where your dad was very strong, really, when it comes to Anguilla's affairs. Did you also have politics in your mind as a career path, sis?
I was always interested in the political conversation. I don't know if I always had it as a career. Some persons projected that on me because of my comfort in speaking about it openly.
Oh, yes.
My mother, many people don't know my mother's political background, but she was one of the young members of the Dominica Freedom Party.
Oh, man.
And
back
she, in 1980s, rocking a similar afro as mine. Yeah. And she was very vocal in that movement, and she's still very involved in Dominican politics. If you ask her any question, she'll have a response to you. She's listening to me today, but other times she might be listening to Kyrie FM and Dominican News Online. And
this happened today. Oh, wow. So she keeps you up to date as to what's happening around the place.
Yes, she's very patriotic. And like you mentioned, my father as well, who most persons will know has a history in politics. And because of that, both of their interests, politics have always been a conversation at our family's table. And I've always been comfortable with having open political opinions because of that upbringing. And most importantly, because of that, politics is in line with patriotism from my experience. So if you are an Anguillian, if you're a Dominican by association, you have to ask the questions of your leaders. You have to be involved in the conversations, and you should be unafraid to challenge where there needs to be a challenge.
Was it difficult to get you involved? I mean, it should not have been in a house to get you involved because your family's that way. And most times you grow up in a political household, it's easy to get involved. I know that too. So it was difficult to get you into the race, right?
It was extremely difficult.
Serious?
You can ask Dr. Lorenzo.
To get you
It
in the
was
race?
very difficult. They've been asking me, I think, probably for the last 2 years, and the answer every time was no. In fact, up to the launch in Island Harbor, I was there as Dee-Ann's campaign manager. I was not a candidate, and I was assisting her, you know, speeches and appearances, Facebook and all of that stuff, and that was my position and my preferred position at the time. But I think what happened is that I had a moment to rethink my decision. And it started with my husband asking me, if change can't wait, why are you asking the party to wait? When you are able and willing to do it. And I had to reconsider that and face it. I think part of becoming a leader is asking yourself if you are in the position to represent the people who want you. You don't elect yourself. Movements aren't created by, politicians don't create movements, I was trying to say. People must ask the politician to move. And that night, walking around the crowd, from then until now, my phone has been buzzing. Are you running or why aren't you?
I heard the buzz out there too. I was saying you should be running. I heard that too. So.
And so I had to reconsider, and I did.
All right. So I know that you have your strong views on lots of issues, and I know that when it comes to issues in Anguilla, for years I've known you. You have your views on things. How does your views align with that of the APM and their politics and you know, and their policies?
They are very closely aligned. I say that confidently because I am also, before even announcing and considering to run, I've been a part of the policy committee. So I was taking a backseat role and assisting with the development of the policy to ensure that our policies are reflective and inclusive and represent that of the people of Anguilla. I think one of the most important things, in my opinion, is that beyond the policies, is that the culture of the party is one that I can buy into and agree with. With Dr. Lorenzo Webster as a leader, one of the things I've realized from my association with him is that Dr. Webster is a leader that considers. When you have strong opinions, the worst thing you can possibly do is align yourself with a party where the leader does not consider your contributions. When I sit at the table of the APM, I'm not there as a token. I'm not there as a young person tick, a female tick. I'm there as a voice who's empowered through practice and association to speak and know that I'll be heard. So I can oppose with our leader and feel that confidence that he would listen to where I'm coming from, and we can make decisions that are more inclusive. And that is the kind of leadership the Anguilla Progressive Movement is about, and that is the kind of leadership that I think Anguilla needs.
All right. Now, in terms of the issues that you are, passionate about, Anguilla's issues at this point in time, what are among those issues?
Oh, issues. Well, first, I think one of the main things that we should consider is how we address marijuana. I think that's first and foremost. We should be able to follow the world lead and assist our young persons with moving forward with no record and assist them with getting back into our community. One of the things I think is not that I'm just going out here and saying legalize it all. I think it's a process. We must first start with medicine, I believe. That will give our law enforcement an opportunity to play with the regulations and ease into that direction, so we just don't jump forward with no safeguards around us. The other thing I believe in as it relates to marijuana is an educational process, because we all know now that marijuana is not the big scare that we thought it was, but also abuse of it is also carries negative implications. Right, so we need to educate persons on proper usage and then eventually lead on into that. Another thing that's very important to the APM is e-governance. In an opportunity to ensure efficiency in the government. We have a lot of young, great minds across the government who are members of the government, and of the public service, and then they're being underutilized. They're in positions where they want to do more, but they don't have the systems to support those actions. And part of our mandate is to see how we can incorporate technology to assist our government to becoming more efficient.
And by that you mean artificial intelligence. That's the talk we had this morning here.
Not fully artificial intelligence as in replacement of people with technology, but using technology to assist the process. So don't get afraid and say, you know, my job is going to be taken over by a computer. That's not what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of proper support. I'm thinking of proper support structures. And another thing that's very personal to me is establishing our legislature to act in a way, our legislative arm to act in a way that really is inclusive. Right now, how we see it, why should we have a House of Assembly, Hammer? What do you see happening there? You know, at the government of the day just goes in and say, right, they just go in and say, hey, you know, we want this and it's done. I think the persons who are in opposition are elected. And I think sometimes we forget that. We forget that a majority of people in a certain area said, this person represents my views. And we should give them the opportunity to participate in a meaningful way in our governments, and not the way we've done it so far.
Well, that is so true. All right. So, in terms of this run you're on now here, you know, I know that you're at large now. Some say district is good. East End families there at large. Now, why you chose that large route? I mean, in fact, that's quite obvious. Why? Did it cross your mind to try the district even before now?
I never really got the chance to consider it, because when I really sat down and considered my participation in election and in this process, we already had a very capable candidate in that of Mr. Jerome Roberts in our district. So I don't think I got the opportunity, and I feel once I get comfortable with at-large, I might remain here.
Yeah, at-large is good. Yeah, at-large is good for sure. Well, your leader, Dr. Webster, I'm hearing that said that voters who wish to see change, I'm hearing, I should vote for all, you know, the APM at-large candidates and not independents. Do you support that view?
I definitely support that view. That's why we're running together. But one of the things I think of is when you're an independent candidate, you have to, in your heart, align in some way with somebody. You must say that, you know, even though I'm running independent, this party I would prefer to run with. And I think if you are thinking of supporting an independent candidate, your first question beyond what they would want to do is who would they partner with? Because that's how you get the opportunity to understand their intentions and the kind of leadership they will bring to you. But if you want real holistic change, like I said, the organizational compatibility with a party, we can't individually we can be strong, but collectively we're powerful. And it makes more sense to put your vote behind a party.
I hear you. Now, youth is the big thing, the buzzword up here now. Some believe that some guys are too young. Some are saying, you know, Dee-Ann is young, you are young, and all that stuff, you know, and experience to run at this time. How would you respond to that?
Well, Hammer, first I would say, age is not synonymous with experience. And that is very important. Sometimes we say, you know, this person, you know, they have, and also what we do sometimes is confuse familiarity with experience. Just because you've been around a thing a lot, it doesn't make you an expert on the thing. And we can look at persons like Dr. Martin Luther King, somebody that's very obvious to go to, Malcolm X. We can look at Mark Zuckerberg. The way how he revolutionized the way we communicate with each other and keep in touch with each other. So we can see young leaders across the world making waves, you know. And another thing I would want to say is sometimes experience is used as a tool to support arrogance. And in that arrogance, there's no weight behind it. So you can say, you know, my experience of this, my experience in this, you may not be innovative, you may not rethink the way you look at certain things, you may become complacent because you feel my experience is enough. Young persons coming into spaces that they may not be quote unquote experienced in, they come with a unique tool, and that is that of innovation. We are unafraid to change things. If you look at companies like JCPenney, you look at Toys R Us, You look at Payless, they're gone because young companies came in and changed. They changed the landscape, and we are unafraid of changing the status quo. While the experience or the familiar are more motivated to maintain it.
All right. Now we know that you are in fact positioned well. Folks, she's the daughter. For those who may not know of Mr. Quincy Gumbs Senior, Fair Play Group of Companies, and she has been a very integral part of that operation for a long time, from a child actually. Been around the business, so a very integral part of it. How will this impact this whole thing, your life and what you do? I mean, this run. How have you considered that? The impact it will have on you, or how you will juggle that? How do you see it?
Well, currently, I spoke to my staff, and they are all supportive of this move. And I am positioning the business to operate without me if I'm successful.
Okay.
And that's important. But also, I think when you reference my experience there, you see as a young person, just 26 years of age, I have been around operating, negotiating, managing, juggling, prioritizing, internationally, regionally, representing. So that experience there, I think, is one of the experiences that emboldened me to step out right now. And I feel confident in my ability to transition from that space to this.
All right. So for electors out there, voters across country Anguilla, listening to us right now, the Anguillan diaspora, if we've asked the question, why should we vote for Quincia Gumbs-Marie at this time?
Yes. I think what our country and region at large is thirsty for is leaders who are humble, who are honest, transparent, and unafraid of accountability. And that is the kind of leadership you'll get in me. When I'm out there and meeting new people, their concerns is the lack of communication. Someone told me, as it relates to the banking situation, they didn't have strong opinions of it, but they felt that if they are going to pay for this decision, then they must understand what is happening, how we got there, and also what measures are in place to prevent that from happening again. Leaders need to, first of all, understand that their role, especially as ministers, is servants first. When we set out to establish our manifesto, we had a blanket manifesto. We said we wanted to address certain things: education, the economy, health. But what we did is we filled that manifestos with ideas from the people, because we would have our own opinions, we'd have our own ideas. But if they aren't in line with the people, then we shouldn't run. We need leaders who are inclusive, who realize that persons who does not think like them aren't opposition, but they're opportunities to expand, grow, and unify the island. We need leaders who are unafraid of being accountable, answering questions, and who create the environment that our electorate feels confident that they can ask these questions of our leaders. And that is the kind of leader that you would find in me. I think that is the kind of leadership that Anguilla needs. That's the kind of leadership that the Anguilla Progressive Movement is bringing forward.
Your assessment of the current situation in Anguilla, my sister, and how things are going, I'm sure you've been looking on and assessing Anguilla's, movements. Maybe if you have juxtaposed it against what's happening elsewhere in the Caribbean as well. How do you assess what's happening here with this administration?
I would never be one of those persons to come on and say nothing is happening in the country. I think that's disrespectful. I think a fair move is that things are happening, but what is happening is that a lot of these things that are happening are not inclusive. So a lot of people are saying, I didn't know this was happening in our government. I don't agree with this thing, and we have no way to stop it, no way to protect ourselves as a country. When we look at other countries, Barbados, for example, and the bold, innovative moves that they are making towards improving their economy and properly representing their people, why can't that happen in Anguilla? And I feel like that is the kind of leadership we are hungry for. And that's what I would like to see.
All right. For election day, we're going to vote for what, tell me?
Quincia Gumbs-Marie, the sailboat, and all the other members of the Anguilla Progressive Movement.
All right. And to the youth of the land, those who are yearning for, representation, and I'm hearing you right now, what did you tell them today? The youngsters of Anguilla, those at home and abroad.
I'll tell them, first of all, to get involved. There is power in your vote. And a lot of people feel like they are powerless and no one is listening. You have representation in us. And it's not just that we are here representing younger persons. We are here representing a different kind of leadership, the leadership that you have seen abroad and wished for here. We are here because we realize that our peers are not coming back home, and those who are here are looking for opportunities to leave. And I'm a part of our Anguilla structure. If you go right back to the first slaves that remained here, is that they had the opportunity to leave. They could have, leave and find more bountiful lands. They were told that Anguilla was a land that they would die in.
They were encouraged to leave.
And they decided to stay. And look at us now. The generation before us, they fought for Anguilla because they thought Anguilla was worth fighting for. And now our young persons are leaving. That in itself, and at the core of it, is un-Anguillian. And I can't blame them. We need leadership that understands that while there are opportunities out there that Anguilla probably can't assist with developing, that every Anguillian out there, their primary goal is to come back home. We need to give them something to be proud of. And that is the representation the young persons can depend on.
That is true, because right now we are doing this program right now, and the person I'm getting with are most are overseas Anguillans, but who take time out every program to listen now to hear what we're saying in Anguilla. And they're very much involved. They want to be a part of, they want to return home. Most persons want to return home. And that's the true thing. Most of them want to return to their country, and we need to ensure that when they get back here, that we have something for them to be a part of.
The truth is that the government's role is to facilitate that by development and showing that opportunities are here. And so that's what we would like to do.
All right. Well, people are saying, great, Quincia. I think that a number of my persons are giving me the thumbs up here, really and truly, that you're great. So very good indeed. All right. So, Dr. Webster, well, I'm seeing here, brother, that, that you continue along with your APM to make significant strides, brother, and, the inclusion of youth within this organization really and truly has added a new dimension here where people are now feeling a huge sense of hope, it seems.
Yes, and that was the reason for the rebranding. Basically, we wanted to have a broad tent to open up the movement to everyone who wanted to get on board. And we see it happening that there are concerned Anguillians, young and old. And we can't forget the elderly that we have to look out for. They have done their part on this stage, and we have to make sure that they're remain healthy, that we provide opportunity for them to go into their twilight years, knowing that they have left a good mark, and that there are others who will follow and take up the mantle. But the young people, those are the ones who are sitting by the sidelines and felt that they had no ownership in Anguilla, and I think it's time for them to not feel disenfranchised, that they're empowered, educated, that they're engaged in this country, and that's what we're seeing. And so I am proud to be affiliated with these young women and the youth that have come on board, and with our other candidates that will be launched in the future, and so that's where we're headed. And as I said, the Anguilla Progressive Movement, under the symbol the sailboat, all hands on deck, and we're sailing forward.
All right. Now, Dr. Webster, we all know what is happening here, the economic situation that is plaguing the country for all these years. It's getting gotten worse in recent times. The reversals of gains we made over the years in Anguilla, that's real. We've seen it, and Mr. Gumbs-Marie spoke a while ago about the mass exodus of youngsters out of Anguilla to the UK. That's real as well, and there's serious hardship, on the island. We know that verging on poverty in many cases from some persons, actually in the first hand, in many instances being compounded by more and more taxes too. We have GST coming up now for sure, and I'm concerned about that. Yet some in government service, including ministers of government, are taking home significant salaries, big money, 37,000 a month. What does the APM, where does this part of the APM movement stand on this? Because persons are concerned about high salaries. In Dominica, Skerritt's salary is under $12,000. over in Antigua, 11 something. I know that under $12,000 as leaders and all that stuff. Where do you stand on these high salaries on the APM?
Well, Hammer, if you remember, under the former Anguilla United Movement administration, they made 2 cuts in the legislators' salaries. And I think that given that everyone is sacrificing right now the state of the country as it is, we have to look into that as an entity that needs to be addressed. And so I would like to pledge now that under the Anguilla Progressive Movement, if we're in administration, that we would look into making cuts in our salaries. And the other thing that I think that we would like to do is is to make sure that the pension scheme, that we contribute to it. Right now, the way the pension set up is that after 2 terms, you get a gratuity, and then you get a pension for life. And most of the legislators have not, it's non-contributory. And I think we have to insist on that, because if we are not contributing to it, I don't think that we should benefit from it when the others, the civil servants, private individuals have to contribute to their own Social Security. Employees, they contribute to their own pension schemes. We need to make sure. Otherwise, what ends up happening, like the police pension scheme, it just implodes. And so this we have to have actuarial analysis, of course, and determine what is necessary to be paid in.
And that is critically important. Doc, the last time we were here, the jetty at Road Bay didn't come up as yet for discussion. We would have covered in our press event where they signed off on the jetty at Road Bay. The British government, they're pumping in, seems to be some over $30 million into that jetty down there, expansion. You heard Mr. Edwards, Mr. Romel Hughes spoke about that earlier as a resident of Sandygram. What is your take on, on this proposed, port expansion at Road Bay?
I think that the port expansion is necessary, but not at Road Bay. I think that the studies were done that showed that Currituck is the best place to have a commercial deep water harbor. And we should have made every effort to do that, because going into an area where there's not enough land, where it's not deep enough, we're certainly running into the same issues that we have now, where only smaller cargo vessels can come in into the port and the pier. And I think that Anguilla, as it is right now in this modern 21st century, we should be making plans where we're looking at Anguilla for the next 50 plus years. And I think that we are being limited by putting the port down in Sandyground. And so I have stated before, and will continue to state, that we need to be forward-thinking, have vision, and long-term plans, and we should be using this money to at least get set up in Currituck so that we can have an Anguilla with a deep water harbor that becomes the gateway to the Caribbean and the Americas.
Now, the question is for either Dee-Ann or Quincia here in terms of Anguilla. For a long time now, we've been commenting, even here on this program, my program for the morning, commenting on, the rapid expansion of the Asians, especially in Anguilla. We're witnessing it. We're witnessing we are Anguillans. You're in the business, Dee-Ann and Quincia as well. We're witnessing that we were once very powerful in business here in Anguilla. So markets are now being controlled by the Asians for the most part. We have other nationalities are entering this thing as well. Somewhat diluting the Anguillan, so to speak. Would you be interested in protecting, and in fact, will we have to be interested in protecting the Anguillan if elected? And if so, what do you propose can be done to help us to ensure that Anguillan businesses, the indigenous businesses, survive and not only thrive but thrive as well? What do you propose?
Well, as a young business owner, I would say that I have the privilege to have ownership and participate in about 4 or 5 different companies. But I stress on the word privilege because it is a matter of inheritance. I did not create these businesses, and I don't see an Anguilla where I can do that as a young person and start out, which means we are going to lose legacies like Albert Lakes and Ashley Brooks and the Proctors and Quincy Gumbs as young persons, and young persons don't have an opportunity to thrive in that way. I think one of the ways we first have to start off is ensuring that we contribute and create an environment where businesses can first of all exist and thrive before we even go through all the technicalities of it. When I say that, that means that the current consumers who are prospective business owners must have the ability to save in Anguilla. Right now, there's so many persons living hand to mouth in Anguilla. They don't have the opportunity to create businesses, although they have very robust and amazing ideas that they cannot act upon. One of the things about that as well is that on one side, we have to protect the consumer by putting certain things in place. So, for example, one of the things that the Anguilla Progressive Movement is working on right now in the policy side is a price ceiling. That's not something that we're going to out there and say we're going to commit to, because we have to be honest with the electorate. We're not here just to say these nice things and get a vote. We have to know what we're capable of doing and all the constraints of it. With a price ceiling, there are lots of other contributing factors that goes into it that must be considered. Some of those factors that from our point of view, we cannot say can happen right away, but there are lots of innovative ways where we can contribute to ensuring that basic goods in Anguilla are affordable, and most importantly though, that our local farmers are considered in a better way than they are right now. So that means that the government gets involved with protecting them. The government gets involved in assisting them with setting up a cooperation and assisting them with being able to market themselves on this island. And then once we get that established, beyond that. So it goes beyond just saying we're going to create a policy and have it there and say, hey, we created a policy, but active involvement in ensuring that current and prospective business owners can thrive.
Access to credit, critically important, I want to believe, too, for us to develop the people as young people in business as well. That's important.
Access to credit, I think part of it is there's collaboration. I think sometimes the government treats the private sector as a person in the private sector as its piggy bank and not a partner. A lot of companies in the private sector will be willing to assist on small business loans at the very least, if the government, on the other hand, offered incentives. So yes, the government can go and say, we're going to give you a 50,000 EC dollar loan, but they can partner with private sectors, businesses, and take off some of the prices that they have to pay and, make some sort of arrangement and exchange to assist with that. And also it's about involving our banks. We have 2 banks right now that are currently in our economy. I know you threw your hand up at that, but we can work with them as they exist. And we also have a few persons who contribute to our economy by providing small loans. The government needs to take them under their wings and assist them in thriving where the government cannot go out and, hand money out and do things on their own.
And the Dee-Ann Kentish-Rogers, your take on the rapid expansion of the Asians and others in our society, where we are witnessing Anguillan businesses that were once strong would have dwindled somewhat. We have seen the loss of that economic clout by our people here, and who controls the economy controls the island, and controls everything. Your take on this?
Yeah, and it's something piggybacking on with what Mrs. Gumbs-Marie said, that you have to look at the overall structure before you step in, because you have a situation where you have individuals who have a lot of personal bargaining power and a lot of economic power because of the way their country's economic system is set up. So when it comes to access to funding and being able to purchase buildings on prime real estate in Anguilla, it's less of a problem for them to have access to that funding and be able to go ahead with finishing the purchase, completing the building, the setting up of their company, and then going into operation while they have economies of scale because they're purchasing together. You, on the other hand, have the Anguillian business owner who doesn't have access to that funding, so we are already competing at a disadvantage. And then that individual now has to come in and set up their business. They don't have they might not have the economies of scale that certain individuals in our who are now operating in our economy have, and that therefore makes it very difficult to compete. Which means once you start competing with someone who's able to price lower than you, who has better competitive pricing, they eventually knock you out of the market. And we've reached a point in Anguilla where, when it comes to protecting local Anguillian businesses, we have to be very vigilant that things that have already occurred in our past have a knock-on and permanent effect on the way we can build in our future. Because the way laws and regulations operate, is that you have to implement and enforce these laws equally across the board. Now, if you have a situation where there are individuals who are now citizens of Anguilla, it's going to be very difficult now, because you can't repeal somebody's citizenship.
The horse is bolted.
The horse has already bolted. The horse is already bolted. So you now have to say, as a people, we now have to think, we have to dig really deep, because this is a very deep issue, in order to get our people to the standard of training and competition, in order to get the business environment that Quincia was speaking about to be so robust, where Anguillians can now put themselves in a position where they can compete and outcompete, because we are encouraging our consumers across the board to go local.
Yep, that is important. That is so important. Now, Dr. Webster, I know that this is a serious thing for us here, but we are out to build this new Anguilla, because we are in a state right now of chaos, so to speak. But we need to move our people forward, and the youngsters represented very well on that issue, sir.
Definitely. I just want to add on to what they said. There's some programs that we think would be helpful. One is that the Get Set program, where young persons under the age of 35 would be given grants of, say, up to $10,000 to start a business. We know that $10,000 is not the amount that you need to do it all, but at least this is a start. The manufacturing policy, where there'd be incentives and duty-free concessions, and that can also apply to young persons who want to get into other businesses such as fishing and agriculture, because what we want to do is incentivize locals to allow them to have a chance to compete in this environment. And then I think we have to do some protectionism, Hammer. We have to have certain industries here in Anguilla that we will say these are for Anguillians only, because it is necessary so that Anguillians get that leg up. And otherwise we will lose this country and become second and third class citizens. And that we cannot allow to happen in this our beloved land. And the other thing that I think is essential is the Anguilla Development Board. That is an entity that is there, and I think we need to fund it so that we can give low-interest loans to Anguillians so they can start businesses, so that they can go off to school and study and come back and participate in this economy, so that we can all have a chance, and our children and children's children.
Let me hit you on that one right there. So you're committing now that if elected, as leader of Anguilla, that you're going to fund the board? Need some money, right?
Has to be. The Anguilla Development Board has to be funded so that we can give low-interest loans to persons in Anguilla, and so that they can have a chance. Definitely.
All right. The area of GST taxes, to my mind, is one of the biggest numbers right now. That's on the mind of several persons. Against the backdrop of an economy that is still struggling, that is not too healthy, less than vibrant. We're having, GST, and I'm seeing GST as a heavyweight around the neck of the people of Anguilla. I'm not sure, Quincia, your businesswoman, you would know these things about the numbers as well. GST, and especially the services aspect of things, really, to my mind, will be somewhat of a shocker, really, to the economy of Anguilla. Do you agree with that?
I do agree, and I do agree that the people cannot take it. But I also, on the other hand, know that part of it is to fund a loan that we may not have agreed to take, but we did. And payment must be made.
So we have a loan,
and so on one end, if it is in fact, because I prefer to deal with things in an honest and realistic way. So you won't hear me saying things like the levy will be removed or anything like that. But what I do think is, if we are to continue with GST in the way that it is going, the least we can do for the Anguillian people is to ensure that there's no wastage on the other end. Right now, a lot of persons are using the treasury like it's their purse. We need to make sure that we block some of those leakages up. And I think that is a more important commitment, or let me not say important, but a more realistic commitment. That is, if we must go to the people and ask them for more, we must say what you are putting in will not be spent frivolously and will not go unaccounted for. And we have too much of that going on in our current state.
Are you concerned, though, about the cost of living being increased exponentially? I mean, these things have the effect of carrying it up.
Yes.
You mentioned a while ago that what your father did with the businesses, you as a young person cannot do it now. And in those days, a bag of cement was a couple of dollars. All that stuff was different. But now with everything that happens in government, when taxes increase, the cost goes up on living as well. Really, it makes it a little difficult for youngsters to be able to achieve certain things as well in our society.
I think a lot of persons are getting away with a bit on the private sector with the lack of controls from government, which is why we are looking into very seriously price controls. So at the very least, the most basic items will not run you dry. And also, once we do that, we have to go into creating a Bureau of Standards and getting involved in how in the experience the consumers have with the different private sector companies. So once we get in there and get involved and bring on other business owners, we can then see where Anguilla can try to find a way to reduce some of the costs, because it would be very dishonest of me to go in there and say, once these taxes go up, we're going to go and make sure that this happens and everything else is lower. That is unrealistic. But what the government is not doing, though, I asked this at one of the GST presentations, who is going to go to ensure that the prices on the shelf goes down, because now we're going to be paying taxes at the end as opposed to it being incorporated with the product. Who's going to ensure that this happens? Who's going to ensure that the price goes down? And I was told, unfortunately, by our premier, that the market will decide that for itself. And that is not true. That is not realistic, and that is not the role of the government. They have to get involved, and they have to make sure that our consumers are being protected. And so one of the key ways I think we can ensure that Anguillians aren't priced out and don't have anything to save is to utilize our government our government's abilities in a proper way by being regulators and going in there to ensure that they are protected.
And that is what it should be for real. But over in Dominica in particular, that's example. I know that you are very familiar with that territory. I was checking the prices there recently in terms of cost of living. It's a lot lower than here.
Yes,
that's for sure. And my question would have been along those lines here, because in Anguilla we are right up here, but our costs we are right up there. Whatever you do, it ranks it up a little higher. A little higher, it goes higher and higher for you, and you don't want to place Anguilla out of the reach of your people either. That's my concern, my fear, that we're doing these things. Of course, we have all this debt to settle, things that we did not. Some of it we did out of our making, but it's there. We have to deal with that stuff. But the cost to the Anguillans, that's my concern. And while the cost goes up, salaries remain down here. That's a concern that I'm looking at. Okay, your take on it, GST. I'm sure you've been reading up on it too and following the happenings. You are someone who I know reads quite a lot.
Yes, no, I've been following the debate about GST, and I went to some of the the recent consultation that the government had with the brokers, the custom brokers, just to listen in and see what was the perspectives from across the board. And through my experience with them, I've heard that there has been some disagreement about exactly what was the net effect of the imposition of the interim goods tax. And the government has said that the intention of the tax is to make it revenue neutral. They found that wasn't the case, and that they said that they're going to make adjustments in order to ensure that it is revenue neutral. So I assume that means that any individual, I'm only making an assumption here, but I assume that if there's there are people who have had to pay in excess, that they will be reimbursed for the impact of those decisions. So in this beginning stage of the imposition of this the tax platform, because this is another way that they've described it to us, it's a tax platform, which is going to be used in the future. Then that's how you're going to build your tax collection in Anguilla. Now, in 2021, that's when we'll see the expansion of the goods and services, the services aspect will come in. And that is something that will go across the board in Anguilla. Because at the moment, services per se aren't taxed.
I know.
But once you see, and this is a concern that I personally have, when you see the bracket, obviously it's going to be easier in terms of collection, because if you're implementing a tax on, say, the food that you're eating, everybody has to eat food, so you're collecting, but you're also feeling the impact is going to have in my mind, a compounding impact, because if I am paying a tax for a service, usually what people who are providing that service do, they pass on the tax to the consumers. So when you're passing on the tax to the consumers, the individuals who are taking part in your economy are now in a position where it's going to be harder for them to afford the services that we need to push our economy forward. And then they're staying on, let's just say, the rate of salary that they're currently on.
It's not increasing.
It's not increasing.
It's right there.
And so you are squeezing the pockets. People's disposable incomes will become lower. What they can do for their families becomes less. There is a compounding impact of implementing these services. And I think we have to sometimes sit back and say, okay, let's just see how we can restructure something like this. I understand. Don't get me wrong. As Quincia said, I'm not a person who believes in saying, hey, everything they're doing, everything the government is doing is wrong. I do not subscribe to that, and I believe it's very destructive, because you're not looking for the people of Anguilla. But I also believe that you have to look at everything you're implementing within the environment that you're implementing it in, which is why what Quincia said about having a bureau of standards, having proper data collection, because I think that's also another problem in Anguilla. We don't have proper data collection sources and statistics. So when we come to look at the impact that certain decisions have had on us from time immemorial, we can't necessarily point and say, hey, this is what history has taught us, and therefore let's pause here. Let's pause, because it means that we need to readdress our actions.
I am impressed by you, these ladies. I'm blown away. I'm taken off today. I'm really enjoying speaking to these youngsters here, these young ladies, man. Their depth, the understanding of the issues, and just the fresh lines of thinking. Really, I love what's happening. I love it.
Yeah, so is the World Wide Web, the internet. I mean, it's like my phone has gone crazy. It's getting hot in my pocket here. Yes, I mean, very, very visionary and transformative. And we say young, but that's just because of the age number. In terms of intelligence and experience, I think they've topped the mark.
Trust me.
Yes.
Today they're very impressive here, and lots of people are saying the very same thing to me on my phone, how impressive they are, with the delivery here today. Now, let me ask you a question, because I would have heard this before from detractors. They here quickly, Dee-Ann. I know that you are the family, of the Kentishes and the Lakes in Anguilla, and I know for years that the detractors have been trying, on their backs, really, and some are believing that because you are, from that family, that there will be a challenge really for you. I've heard that from in those areas. How would you address those persons who are who believe that because you are a Lake and Kentish that this is something different and all that stuff, and how would you address that whole chapter? I'm sure you would have heard it yourself around the place, right?
Yeah, I've heard it from individuals before, and thankfully, them having a conversation with me, that's changed their minds.
Yes.
So my strategy really is, I'm going in, I'm getting the opportunity to talk to you. If you have something that you want to say to me, don't be afraid to say it, and I will address it head on. Okay. Because, and this is a part of what type of leadership are you offering people? You look at people's history or their families, and you don't listen to what they have to say and what they are saying that they're going to offer you. I think you're also kind of doing yourself a disservice, because when you're looking across the board at who are you electing, in essence. And that's the person who's before you, the ideas, the person's ability to represent you, the person's experiences abroad and at home, the person's experience regionally. And you almost wipe the scale of their experience clean and say you have nothing other than your name. And you and to me that is a very it's really sad. There's another word that I wanted to use, but I think it's a very sad method of silencing people from using their voices, to shut them up and tell them that you don't have a right to participate in a society that has produced you, in a society that you want to be involved in. And I've said to individuals before on the campaign trail that, look, if there is something or concern that you have, and a reasonable concern, because I also have seen that when people have reasonable concerns, they're not afraid to say, hey, this is my concern with you. But when people have a feeling, hey, this is part of a propaganda package, they're very, very tentative about saying something like that to you, because they already understand that it has no real standing.
Yes, deliberate propaganda.
Yes, it's a part of a propaganda machine that you push out rhetoric like this to undermine someone's ability to speak up. And I think that this is the propaganda machine that has been in operation in Anguilla, which is why a lot of young people don't want to get involved in politics, because they've used this machine to shut people up. Yet people want you to step forward.
Yeah, but you gotta go forward. Don't shut up. Don't shut up. Don't you dare shut up. Let no one shut you down, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you, ladies. I'm very powerful indeed. Very powerful. Quincy, I'm impressed with you highly. Dee-Ann Kentish, I'm highly impressed. The future of Anguilla is bright with you guys around here right now. I mean, you will lead these people to negotiate with you with the British.
Yes, definitely.
I believe so.
That's rounding us up to something else that I want to discuss very briefly.
Okay, yeah.
Many people don't know, but the members of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office are coming to Anguilla next week to negotiate Anguilla's constitution with members of the government. And this is in relation to our electoral reform and constitutional reform. Now, as part of something that's so central to your country, your constitution is almost like your birth paper, right? And if you have someone coming in to negotiate your constitution with you, and you're getting 6 days notice, hey, these individuals are coming, they're not reaching out and saying, hey, can you engage with us on this particular topic? I think that's a sign of the times, in a sense, that you operate in such a cocoon about something that's of vital importance to the people of Anguilla.
Well, that's the perpetuation of the silence, mode around here. That's a thing that happens all the time, really. And we need to break that, though, about there's a sea of silence in Anguilla that for some reason, and it is very much, the hallmark of the administration to be very silent for a long time until they can speak to it. But you're right about that. Point taken.
Yes, and Hammer, just going on with that, something as important as constitutional reform, we would think that the government and especially the governor's office would have reached out to the leaders of the opposition parties and invite us to be part of those negotiations, because this is what will determine our future and impact every single Anguillian, born and unborn. And I think it's important that as many voices as should be heard can be heard. And so I am appealing to the governor's office and to the government to include us, the opposition leaders and representatives as part of these negotiations, because I think if that doesn't happen, we don't have true representation. And I've had several calls today, starting at about 5 this morning, where persons are saying, if we don't feel we have representative participation, we will need to demonstrate. And we really feel that it's necessary to have a seat at the table when Anguilla is its future is now to be determined.
And that is important, very important, and I hear you on that one. I'm sure your supporters will also take a cue from there, and very strong point you're making there. Well, we have to end here, but in closing,
Yes, thank you again, Brother Hammer, for this time. I want the people of Anguilla to, when they see Mrs. Quincia Gumbs-Marie around, come up to her, engage her. She'll be coming out, she'll be going across the island. If she hasn't worked yet, certainly she will be working now to win the hearts and minds of the people. And as I said, this team of young, energetic persons that have put themselves up, sacrificing their jobs and their futures, really, to be representatives, servant representatives, as Ms. Quincia said, of the people. I think this is commendable, and I am, proud and happy to lead this team. And I know that we will do great for the people of Anguilla and for generations by setting the standards as have been outlined in terms of the policies which we will look into. So I want to thank you again. Thank the people of Anguilla here and abroad for listening, and thank you for this opportunity. And
before you go, your good friend Mark Romney says he's happy. He wants to, he's happy that you two new candidates fully grasp the issues surrounding GST. Okay, for which he are being labeled, by the APM, and but then essentially said the same thing he's saying. So he wanted to know that.
Well, no, I think I think that he's trying to blur the lines there. No, and we still feel that the services part of the GST is going to cripple Anguilla unless you can expand and grow the economy. And our plan would be to stimulate, grow the economy, and then we don't have need for these taxes which are being imposed upon us in a dead economy. I want to go back to saying that businesses are not doing well in Anguilla at this point in time. The economy has contracted, and the banking sector is in disarray. And even the hotels, with the increasing the accommodation tax, that has also been done, and that is also part of this GST. And so I think that if we cripple all our businesses, and then we go even after the breadbasket, tourism, that we certainly, not allowing ourselves and Anguilla to have a chance in the future. So I thank Mr. Romney. I know that he'll be on the platform on the 16th, so may hear what he has to say, and hopefully he stops fooling the people, because, that's what he's been doing as the PRO for this administration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Quincia, closing out.
I do want to leave with persons that this election is a very important one. And what they have the tool of voting, one that carries currency, one that carries opportunity, and one that carries a way out of what they're currently facing. With that tool, it is important to listen. We cannot be comfortable with the politics of predetermined X's. Give your ear to persons who come to you. Ask them the questions. A lot of persons are having a crisis of conscience because they're seeing that better representation is not where they are accustomed of being. Feel comfortable with exploring the value of your vote, and we will be very pleased, very proud, and very honored to represent the Anguillian people. Thanks for having me on.
All right.
I don't think I can follow that up with better words, so we'll end on those.
Encourage her. Nice. Okay, well, thank you guys for coming through again, and wish you all the best, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, class, I'm here in the afternoon time, folks. We're just about